Hi everybody, it's me again, and I truly apologize that this continuation list has taken a long time. But well, here it is now before I get to anything else. Okay, so I've talked about the very bad Disney animated sequels, which did not include Pixar, and why they were each atrocious and what was wrong with each of them. But this time this time we're going to look at the diamonds in the rough. Because, well, for every bad animated Disney sequel that there's been some decent ones, or really good. Really, really good. And today we're going to do 4 of them. Why 4 instead of 3? Well, because, one of these sequels I cannot get around not talking about because it's just that good. So let's get on with it. The sequels that I consider really, really, really good. Okay, so without further ado, number 4, Peter Pan 2: Return to Neverland. Yes. It's pretty heavily debated on whether or not it's a good sequel, but I honestly can't get around it. I like this movie. I really do. Do I think it's better than the first Peter Pan? Oh, absolutely not. But I think it's good in its own right. So what's the plot? Oh, basically, Wendy's now grown up, married, and has 2 children, Jane and Danny. Wendy has not lost faith in Peter Pan's existence, even in the midst of World War II, where her husband has been sent off to war, and soon her children must be evacuated. Yes, they actually do that in a Disney sequel. Jane, on the other hand, has been forced to grow up quickly due to making sure everyone is safe, causing her to lose faith in childhood and Peter Pan until the night Captain Hook kidnaps her, takes her to Neverland, and it's up to Peter Pan and the Lost Boys and ultimately herself to learn how to fly and go back home to her family. And we are talking about a time when Disney sequels did range from lazy to okay, and this one actually felt like it tried. Apart from the fact that, well, yeah, it was a theatrical release, but they gave it their all. They really did effort into it. Not just the animation, but the storyline and the characters. The movie is focused on Jane's struggle to help her family and the fact that she's losing her faith in childhood and struggling whether or not to keep it or to throw it away and grow up. I actually like that, and the fact that it does not make her a stick in the mud. They actually make her identifiable because people went through situations like this. Maybe they didn't go to Neverland for it, but they went. One time or another, we have wondered, should we keep our childhood and faith and so on? Or should we just throw it away and grow up, for lack of a better word? And this movie kind of tries to show the balance of that, but not in a very, very well done way. I will admit that. I will admit that it doesn't do that in a really good way. In fact, for all the good moments that it does have, there's at least 3 things about it that actually bothers me. The first one is the Lost Boys song actually annoys me. Because it's poorly sung, poorly paced. But then again, I guess I can't blame them because direct-to-DVD sequels and all. And the other issue I had was the crocodile that chases after Captain Hook is now replaced with an octopus that just pops for no reason. The crocodile had swallowed a clock, so it made sense why there was a ticking going on all the time. but the octopus has no reason to be popping out of nowhere. And I mean, though admittedly it is it is a pretty scary character in some ways, or at least it scared me as a kid. I guess they wanted to try and take things a little more seriously, but it's Captain Hook and Smee versus whatever's chasing Hook. It's supposed to be fun. I mean, at least by Disney standards. And it wasn't as fun as the crocodile, honestly. And for the third one, I am going to go into spoilers on this, so sorry. There is this aspect that actually does kind of bother me a bit. And one of the online reviewers that I truly respect, I'll put the name down below because I can't really pronounce it off the top of my head, and I don't want to butcher it. So look below, and you'll see what his name is. He basically considered this movie disrespectful because his grandmother lived in the war and she had to evacuate London as well and sacrifice her childhood for her family. Well, I don't see this as as intentionally a mockery as much as something like Pearl Harbor being a mockery, but aside from that, it didn't look like it was intentionally bent on that. But I will point out this one for the ending, and again, I'm going into spoilers. There's a moment in the ending where Jane's father comes back, and the children, comes back, and the children who are supposed to evacuate in the morning go out to greet the father, and they're all hugging like one happy family, and then Peter Pan and Tink just fly off to Neverland like they've accomplished their mission. There was supposed to be an evacuation for the next day, and well, the war did not end until 1945, and this film looks like that it was supposed to take place like 1941 or something. And they're hugging like the war is just over. That's not how it works. I mean, yeah, soldiers on occasion might have gotten breaks, but that's not actually how it works. I mean, that was too easy of a happy ending. I mean, wouldn't the ending have worked better if maybe it ended with Danny and Jane off at the train station, and Jane looks up in the window, looks up at the sky, seeing the second star to the right straight on till morning, and saying, "I'll always believe in you, Peter Pan," and then cuts to her telling Danny a Peter Pan story, and then Peter Pan flying over the train. That would have been a stronger ending. But for what we got, I actually enjoy it. I guess you could call it a guilty pleasure, but at the same time, I mean, there were things that I admire about it, but also things that they could have done a lot better on. Okay. Number 3. Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. Oh yes. I mean, I really could not get around this. This was good. I did not grow up with this. I admittedly did not grow up with this movie, so I had a harder time putting this on the list because, well, yeah. I mean, The Lion King didn't really interest me as much as a kid, but then again, I wasn't allowed to watch The Lion King as a kid, so Simba's Pride is kind of for me as a kid, but looking back at it, it's clever. I mean, it's really, really clever. So whereas the first movie was about, was basically the animal version of Hamlet, with the happier ending, this was the animal version of Romeo and Juliet, with the happier ending. And what they do with it is just really, really good. So, like I said again, it is the animal version of Romeo and Juliet, which means that so Simba and Nala have given birth to Kiara, a little lion who's going to one day be queen of the Pride Lands. And the Outlanders, who liked the rule of Scar, have Kovu set up to be next in line and to take over Pride Rock. Yet somehow Kiara and Kovu fall in love, and this is causing a great this is causing both a great rift between both prides, as well as somewhat of a union. And the way they pull it off, I love it. I really, really like it. It's not my all-time favorite Disney sequel, but and the animation actually for what they had was really good. They really tried, and hey, Simba's actually a much more interesting character than in the first movie. In fact, in some ways, you could argue that the movie is kind of about him. In some ways, it's called Simba's Pride, and in this way, I think it goes in both versions of the word pride, whether it's the group of lions or pride, like arrogance, and it shows both in here, where Simba cannot get over, where Simba cannot get past the fact that Scar had killed his father. And yeah, I don't blame him for that, because, well, it traumatized him for life. And here's Kovu, who is a not descendant of Scar, yet somehow related to him and looks like him. Okay, yeah, that's the biggest problem with the movie. We'll get into that later. Falling in love with his daughter. Ouch. And yet somehow is not like Scar. And decides to not go the same route as Scar, and it is interesting to see Simba overcoming the situation and overcoming his prejudice against anybody associated with Scar, and also seeing past it thanks to his daughter falling in love with Kovu. And the only issue that I ever had with it, like I said before, was Zira, who is Kovu's mother, somehow talks to Kovu like he is the son of Scar, and yet in the first movie nobody was related to Scar. And why did the lions actually... why did those lions, the Outlanders, actually like the reign of Scar, where they tore up the entire savannah? I don't know. If they explained a little more detail on that, I think it would have been one of the stronger Disney sequels. But as is, it's really good, and I applaud Disney for making an effort to not only try and do a good follow-up to one of their to the highest grossing movie that they ever had for until Frozen came along, but also that they were able to retell Romeo and Juliet in a kid-friendly way. Okay, and with that said, I have to go to number 2, which actually is a surprising one for me. Number 2, Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time. Talk about one of the stupidest ideas you could ever hear for a Disney sequel. What are some of the stupidest ideas for a sequel in general? One of them is time traveling. Yeah, it sounds like a stupid idea, but somehow, only 2 sequels that I've ever seen so far not counting Back to the Future because that was always time travel. Only 2 sequels that I've ever seen so far were able to pull it off amazingly. One of them was Avengers Endgame. The other is this. Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, could pull off time traveling in an amazing, unique way. So, what's the story and how does it involve time traveling? Cinderella and her prince are living their happily ever after in the most worst song I have ever heard in any Disney sequel, right up there with Falling in Love. And yet somehow, through all that, the one of the stepsisters gets a hold of the fairy godmother's wand, runs off with it, shows it to the stepmother, and the stepmother uses it to go back in time and undo Cinderella's happily ever after and make it so that the slipper had fit her older daughter Anastasia's foot all along. And they go off to the palace, leaving Cinderella to grope for her happily ever after in the dark. And it is incredible. This is a very forced idea. This is one of the stupidest ideas, like I said. And yet, they do it in a fascinatingly unique way. They use the fairy godmother's wand to undo everything back in time. A lot of us keep saying that if we could go back in time and undo something, we would do it. And this movie takes advantage of that. And it also takes advantage of the fact that, that Lady Tremaine has the fairy godmother's wand. She's already scary enough with her angry stare, and they made her even more scary. Heck, they even made the words bibbidi bobbidi boo scary. How do you make silly words like that sound scary? Give them to Lady Tremaine. That, honestly, I have to applaud them on that. I remember seeing the trailers for this thing as a kid, and it scared the living daylights out of me. I'm like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see her scary face. And this somehow made her not only even more scary, but somehow did 2 other things. It made me want to punch her harder in the face, and it managed to make us, the audience, wonder if there was any hope at all that she could be undone. And they have moments where it seems like there's nothing that could be done and that Cinderella should just accept it or find a way to fight it. What's the weak link in it? And it's amazing the ways they come up with it. And on top of that, the characters are really interesting. The king is given more than just shouting, "Give me grandchildren!" He actually is sympathetic and kind and lost his wife many years ago and passes a shell over to his supposed to be daughter-in-law, and it's just beautiful. And Anastasia definitely has a lot more character. The only thing that I ever liked in Cinderella 2 was her was her story with the baker, where she was a lot more interesting. Here, she is so interesting. She's the only one who's really, really interesting. You want to see Cinderella get a happy ending, but at the same time, they do it in such a way where you want to see Anastasia be happy too. It really knows how to pull the heartstrings on you. And even Cinderella fighting for her happy ending is incredible. Of all the Disney princesses, of the top 3 Disney princesses you would not think would fight for a happy ending, you would think like maybe Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, and Cinderella would not be the kind of ladies to fight for a happy ending. But Cinderella fights for a happy ending, and she does it in a believable way too. She's not just the meek and mild, sit back and rescue me kind of character. No, she actually will go to any lengths to get back the prince whom she fell in love with, whom they had little to no dialogue with in the first movie. How did they fall in love again? But at least the prince in here is actually a bit more charming and a little bit more interesting than the first movie. I will give them props on that. Heck, they even make him very, very funny. So, way to go. And hey, and anytime the mice and the birds are on screen, it actually balances with Cinderella and the characters. It does. I mean, they don't hijack the movie like in the first one. So I have to give them props on that. I mean, I like the mice in the first movie, but come on, they hijacked most of the movie, and the focus went everywhere except, oh, I don't know, the romance between the prince and Cinderella. But so honestly, with this movie, I cannot think of many flaws, and that is an incredible sign. I mean, when they can actually try something different, and this one actually, I mean, I don't know if like in the Disney sequel company they were given the premise on script. If they pulled out something from pulled out a name and a Disney movie name and a plot from a hat, like let's see, Todd and Copper go in a band. Yeah. Cinderella. Time travel. Okay, that's your assignment. You put Cinderella and time travel into a movie. Let's see what you make of it. You're getting paid many dollars an hour. And yet somehow they actually made it work. This is what I like about good writing. Taking a stupid idea and going all the way in a good way with it. And my final verdict on this, honestly, is go see it. This is a standing ovation. I can't say if it's better than the original movie. That'd probably be a crime. But honestly, it makes a better sequel for Cinderella than Cinderella 2. So you have to see this one. And before we get into number 1, I'm going to give a couple honorable mentions. Bambi 2 was able to actually put some effort in as a sequel and felt genuine in every way. Heck, that dream scene actually makes me cry. And the Aladdin sequels. I sadly cannot put this on the best list because I criminally have not seen them yet, but from what I hear, the effort in both movies are strong. Return of Jafar has very cheap animation, but from what I heard, it's one of the diamonds in the rough, pun intended. And now number 1. Rescuers Down Under! Yeah! I never said that it had to be direct-to-DVD sequels. All I said was that they had to be Disney animated sequels. So, Rescuers Down Under so counts. It absolutely counts. This movie is amazing. This is one of my top favorite Disney movies. Why is it one of my top favorites? Well, let's get into it. First, I will give a background on the first movie because it's probably important that you know about the Rescuers. So the Rescuers basically was about 2 mice from the Rescue Aid Society who rescue anybody who calls out for help, any kids that get kidnapped. And it seems like that 2 little mice can do nothing, or what could 2 little mice do? But both movies managed to pull off what they could do in a really cool way. I mean, the first movie was kind of dark, and a lot of people call it bland. I can kind of see why. But honestly, it was a dark, sad movie, in my opinion. But how is the sequel? Well,
just to give you an idea on how the sequel is, how about I just play the intro music for ya?
And that is just the intro music. I mean, that is just the intro music, and you already feel the adrenaline running for what you are in store for. So, the plot for this one: Cody, a boy from Australia, finds a giant golden eagle and frees it from a trap and gets caught by a poacher, and this goes all the way across the world back to New York City, where the Rescue Aid Society is, and Bernard and Bianca are once again called upon to go rescue him. And this, I mean, unlike the first movie, the first movie was kind of in territory that we knew. This was in territory most of us did not know. And the way they explore it from the size of a mouse is awesome. Everything's gigantic when you're with them, and this was this was a film that came after The Little Mermaid, and the animation really, really shows. They put effort into how it was. The animation is a lot better than the first movie, obviously, and of course the writing is better too. And well, how do you put it? And the characters are incredible. I mean, not just the characters that we already knew, the new ones too. I mean, for the old ones, their character personalities have not changed. And sometimes that happens in sequels, but in here, they're not altered. Nothing is altered about them. You believe that they're going through these changes. You believe that they are excited for this adventure. You believe that Bernard can be assertive. And with the new characters, oh boy, they're a lot of fun. They're awesome. What is it called? Oh yeah, the boy is just an explorer, and is really and it's mostly just our view, so that we can understand what's going on, and so that we can see what's going on. And the villain Percival McLeach, played by George C. Scott. Do I even need to say more about that? George C. Scott, the way his voice is, he sounds like he was born to play a villain. It is awesome that he finally gets that chance. And he has a pet giant lizard. Whereas the last one had alligators for pets, which is terrifying enough, but they make this lizard frightening as well as funny. How do you do that? That's pretty cool. And the side characters, like Jake, is really cool. Who is a kangaroo mouse, and the albatross that takes the rescuers to their mission. Instead of Orville from the last movie, they actually put Wilbur in here. Get it? Orville, Wilbur, right? Am I right? But yeah, this movie, honestly, this is the kind of movie that, this is the kind of sequel that is actually better than the first movie. I like the first movie for what it was able to do, in their runtime, as well as the limited the animation that they had. And the writing that they had was really good. But this one took chances, had fun, went to different environments, and gave everything an upgrade. And like I said before, the animation is really good and better than the first one.
You feel the environment just by looking at it and the way it draws you in, and the lines are softer and smoother than the first movie where the lines just were sharp and stood out. And the music adds tension to it. So, what's my final verdict on this? See it, see it, see it, see it, see it. You absolutely need to see this one. If you haven't seen this one, you go check it out. And if you're all about to say, well, I didn't even see the first one, I can tell you that I saw this movie before I saw the first one. And in spite of that, I felt like I knew who all the characters were. I knew who the old characters were. I got to know the new characters anyways. But the old characters, there were just mainly two old characters if you don't count the rest of the Rescue Aid Society. But you really feel like you know who Bernard and Bianca are because they are already established characters. So, yeah, if you want to see the first movie, by all means, go ahead. It's a good one, in my opinion. Unless you think it's bland, which I don't blame you. But if that's the case, you absolutely should watch this. Rescuers Down Under is an amazing sequel, and it's tragic that it's been overlooked. I don't blame them for overlooking it because, well, Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast were a lot more popular and had a lot more things that people loved about Disney. But honestly, if you love films like Raiders of the Lost Ark or Avengers, those kind of action movies, this is a kind of action adventure movie. May not have killings or anything, but it is awesome. And one of my biggest recommendations of any Disney movie. So, Rescuers Down Under, see it. And that's what I have to say for our good and bad sequel movies of Disney. I thank you for tuning in, and always remember, there can be something good about Disney, or there can always be something good about a movie, even if it is terrible, or even just a series. Even if the series seems like it's terrible, something good can come out of it. Whether a rewrite or a potential for a rewrite, or even just the fact that it actually tries on something. So always keep a lookout for the good in spite of the bad. Thank you for tuning in, and see you later.